Rainbow Reflections, Book 3, Ride the Wild Wind. Chapter 7, Between Hope and Despair. Ren somehow managed to fly the ship without issue, the spirit magic holding well in the engines. She sometimes had to place her hand over the vent in the wheel to add an extra burst of air, but that was more to ease her own nerves than because the vessel actually needed more power. Jabali called once, his hair cut short and his beard shaved off, disguising himself and Hyaktu from the government. Ren was a little relieved to see this, but still worried and guilt-ridden. Jabali told her that Khurshid, Sarala, and C3 had been teleported to Saljun, but Zin was nowhere to be seen. He added that Hyaktu was still unconscious at the hospital, the healers giving him a multitude of potions. Ren paced the deck, an anxious knot in her stomach. She wondered how her father was doing. Why had he fainted? Would the government still manage to locate him? If they arrested him, it'd be all her fault. She pondered where Zin had ended up. Were they safe? What did Kaokat want with them? Did they feel as guilty for their actions as she felt for hers? Would things have ended up differently had she not called the government? Of course they would have. Because Dad wouldn't have been all stressed out and Zin wouldn't have gotten angry at him. We'd still be in school right now. Well, if Jabali didn't tell everyone's parents to get them. But we would still be a family, even if we were done with the school and left it behind. Her heart sunk, and she closed her eyes. It really is all my fault that Zin left. She forced herself to think of the others in Saljun instead. Her mind drifted to Sarala, seeing the image of the tall girl, throwing punch after kick at her. Her heart ached at the thought, and so did her shoulder, which Sarala had hit particularly hard. Ren winced as she rubbed the soft spot, glad that most of Sarala's strikes had been quick rather than powerful, not enough to leave bruises for the most part. She just wanted to rescue the teachers. She knew I would try to stop her from leaving, so she just did what she thought was right. However, no matter how much Ren tried to convince herself that her girlfriend didn't mean to hurt her, she couldn't shake the fact that Sarala did. But I hurt my family. I split us apart by calling the government, Ren pointed out to herself. So why can't I forgive Sarala when she just wanted to help? She sighed. I don't know why I feel like we just shouldn't be together now. She shook the gloomy thoughts from her head before she could ponder the situation further. Though she was tempted to call Khurshid, she left the mirror in her pocket, not wanting to see Sarala. When the trio reached Vinetown an hour later, Ren landed the ship in the forest outside the city, concealing it. Ren then headed for the streets, leaving Mint on the ship with Aster. The sun was very gradually beginning its descent in the cloudy afternoon sky. She pulled out the mirror as she entered the city, calling Jabali again. He answered after only a few seconds.
Yo, Ren, you made it okay?
Jabali asked, squinting closer at the mirror.
Looks like you did.
Yes, Ren said, nodding. Where's the hospital?
Where are you at right now?
Ren stopped in her tracks. She glanced up at the buildings on either side of her, most of the stone structures covered in foliage or containing potted plants on the roofs. There's a sandwich shop, an art store, a bookstore, a tea shop,
Good, you're close by.
Jabali gave her instructions as she walked until she reached the hospital. The hospital was a 3-story stone building, one of the biggest in Vinetown. It was surrounded by trees and covered in vines. The spray from a nearby fountain kept the air misty and light as she approached. Ren entered through double glass doors and walked up to the front desk. The waiting room contained mostly empty chairs, though there were a few people sitting in one corner with their heads down, as if they were weary after a long day. On the other side of the room, 2 healers went by with food from one of the restaurants she had passed on her way over. Hello, Ren said as she came to a stop next to the desk. I'm here to visit a family member, the receptionist interjected in a snooty tone. Ren blinked. Yeah. What's your name?
Lotus Thorntree.
Jabali's voice said loudly on Ren's mirror before Ren could reply. She turned her mirror around so the receptionist could see Jabali's face, letting him take over the conversation.
She's my daughter,
Jabali went on.
She's here to see my husband, her father, Hawk.
If Ren wasn't so desperate to see Hyaktu, she would have snorted in laughter. She bit her bottom lip, trying not to allow a smile to break out on her face. Very well, the receptionist grumbled, tapping their mirror for a few moments before passing her a purple painted twine bracelet. Put this on. They pointed to a stairwell beyond the front desk. Your fathers are on the second floor in room 22. Thank you, Ren said, dipping her head to the person. The receptionist grunted and returned to their mirror. Ren walked up the stairs and made it to the second floor, the hallway emptier than the waiting room below. Lavender and mint overwhelmed her, causing her to scratch her nose as it began to tickle. Nice cover story, Ren commented to Jubali as she walked, almost forgetting that he was still on call as she turned the mirror back on herself. Did you really tell them he's your husband when he came in?
Why not?
Ren shrugged. It's just funny to imagine, she said. Oh, I'm here. She nearly forgot she was supposed to be looking at the numbers on the door. She stopped in her tracks outside room 22, and a moment later, the door opened to reveal Jubali's broad figure. He beamed upon seeing her, then picked her up and hugged her. She let out a yelp of surprise, almost dropping her mirror. Jubali, what's that for?
That's Bubba to you.
Jubali chortled, setting her back on the ground. Ren snorted. Okay, Baba, she teased. Jubali closed the door behind her, his face becoming serious at once, the shadows under his eyes darkening.
The Gov put up wanted posters of your dad.
What? Already? Ren gasped, the smile wiped from her face as her heart began beating rapidly. I might as well be the one arresting Dad at this point. Jubali shrugged.
As long as he keeps his eyes closed, I don't think anyone will recognize him.
He stepped aside so Ren could see the room. A single counter lay on one wall, complete with a sink. 2 chairs sat beside another wall, while a bed was in the center of the room, away from the window. Hyaktu lay in the bed with his arms on either side of him. There were metal rings on both of his wrists, Ren knowing that they were enchanted with water magic to ensure the patient was staying hydrated. But Ren wasn't focused on the room. She stared at her father in astonishment, though it wasn't due to all of the cuts and bruises that covered his body, which were covered in a thick healing paste, thankfully. He no longer had his mustache. It had been many years since Ren saw him without one. She was so focused on the missing mustache that she hardly realized the center of his unibrow had also been shaved away, leaving 2 eyebrows instead. His indigo hair was cut shorter, so it only fell to his chin rather than past his shoulders. Dressed in a blue hospital gown, it was hard to see him as her father. All concerns of the government slipped from her mind as she gaped at him numbly. Oh, she mumbled after a moment. He looks so weird.
Good,
Jubali grunted.
Hopefully the healers that come in to see him don't suspect anything, should they see the posters.
So, what do we do now? Ren asked, moving closer to her father and placing her hand on his.
As soon as he's good to go, we'll leave for Saljan and look for Zin if Khurshid can't find them, then leave the country, considering the Gov wants us.
She bit her bottom lip, tears sliding down her cheeks as she continued to stare at Hyaktu. About that, Baba, I was the one who called the government. It's all my fault. Jubali's thick eyebrows rose in surprise, then he frowned.
Well, that Gov was gonna come regardless, 'cause Wave would have called instead, or one of them students or their parents. I'm sure the Gov received multiple calls, actually, for them to have so many agents show up and take everyone away. So you ain't the one to blame for that. In fact, it's more my fault in that regard, as I told all them students to call their parents. Honestly, the Gov coming is a result of all of our actions.
What do you mean?
It all started with Sorella attacking Wave, and him taking her and Fern from the school, which then inspired Zin to join us in finding her and getting Khurshid captured, and when Sorella came back and pointed out Wave, then your dad left and got himself captured. So you calling the Gov and Zin blowing up only added to a mess that was doomed to happen at some point with everything going on.
But if I hadn't called the government, maybe they would have come later, after everyone was back. And the school would be open, or at least... She sniffled and wiped out her nose with her sweater sleeve. Baba, is it my fault that Zin left? Jabali gazed at her for a long moment, different emotions flashing through his mismatched gaze. Finally, he murmured,
No, Zen leaving was all on them. Sure, if the Gov didn't show up when they did, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But I doubt it. It seemed they were holding a lot of rage inside that was building up all year.
"But if I didn't call the government, they wouldn't have blown up as much as they did," Ren said quietly, squeezing her father's hand for her own comfort. "Or they wouldn't have left in such a fury. Or if they did leave, we could be looking for them now instead of, well, running from the government." Jabali waved his hand.
We'd still be running, don't you worry. And we'd still be in this hospital thanks to your dad pushing his limits. Either way, we can only accept what's happened and move forward from here. You've learned the lesson that the Gov can't be trusted, so you won't make that mistake again.
Ren took a deep breath and nodded quietly. "He's right. I have to accept that I've made a mistake and learn from it. We'll get out of here before the government can find Dad. Then we'll make it to Soljan and find Zin, and then we'll be a family again. I might have hurt the family, but it's not too late to mend it." "So, we're here because Dad pushed past his limits?" Ren mumbled, trying to steer herself to a new topic as she wiped her wet cheeks. Jabali frowned and shifted closer to them.
Yeah, this ain't the first time he's done something like this. He can be very reckless.
Ren glanced at Jabali in surprise. "Dad? Reckless? I guess he can rush into things sometimes, but I never thought of him as reckless." Jabali shrugged.
He was already exhausted before he ran after Wave and got captured, so all the fighting that he did after and getting stuck in them dragon vines, he really needs a break. The school's been eating away at him all year, or more like the Gov and Kaokat's plots. But he's not been in a good mental state for a while now, and I believe he's also stopped his daily Chigun routine, which ain't good. He needs that to remain calm, not get so worked up about things, but...
Jabali shrugged again, his blue eyes focused entirely on Hyaktu.
He always pushes himself too far, and these are the consequences he's gotta deal with.
He glanced over at her and added grimly,
He's been cracking for a while now. He typically hides it from everyone, but I've been able to see. Just be aware that he's probably gonna have a breakdown, and his recovery might take a bit, not only due to physically and magically pushing himself too far, but all the mental stress and emotional weight of the whole Zen situation.
Ren's vision became blurry as more tears slid down her face. She did not respond to Jabali's words, her heart aching for her father. She pulled one of the chairs away from the wall and put it beside her father's bed, sitting down on it. Placing her pointed chin on her palm with a sigh, she wished Hyaktu would just wake up. 2 minutes later, his eyes opened. "Dad!" Ren cried, jumping to her feet. Hyaktu closed his eyes, opened them, closed them, then opened them again. He tilted his head slightly, his mouth gaping open as he stared at her. He was clearly disoriented, the confusion plain on his face. "Are you doing okay?" Ren asked softly. Hyaktu closed his eyes again and groaned. "Dad?" "Hurts," he uttered in a croaky voice. "What hurts?" "Everything." He opened his eyes again and looked over at her. "Zen? Sarala? C3? "Kershid is with Sarala and C3, she murmured. "They're in Soljan. They'll be fine for now." "Zen?" Hyaktu pressed, his gaze more intense. Ren opened her mouth, but couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She swallowed hard, then shook her head. Hyaktu sat up, the action looking like it took much pain and effort. He moaned and closed his eyes again, placing a hand on his forehead. "Dad?" "We need to find Zen," he uttered. To Ren's astonishment, he swung his legs over the side of the bed and tried to stand up. Jabali caught him before he could fall to the wooden floor.
Are ya crazy? Ya ain't going anywhere.
Jabali scoffed.
Back in bed, now.
"Zen," Hyaktu groaned, pushing feebly against Jabali's grasp as his eyes remained closed.
We'll find him, okay? But you need to get your strength back first,
Jabali said, setting Hyaktu on the bed again. "You gotta get Zen," Hyaktu insisted, his words slurring together as his head fell back against the pillow.
We will,
Jabali repeated firmly.
Kurshida's already looking for them in Saljin, okay?
Hyaktu didn't respond, his teeth gritted as he shifted his position slightly. He whimpered like a wounded animal, tears sliding down his cheeks silently. Ren could feel her own eyes staining as she stared at her father, Zin fading from her mind. He's so weak and so hurt. I've never seen him like this before. A chill passed through her whole body, making the hair on the back of her neck and along her arms prickle. A soft sob escaped her. Is he going to be okay? He has to be okay. Jabali glanced at Ren, putting a large hand on her shoulder. His own eyes were glistening as he looked back towards Hyaktu. Hyaktu shifted in the bed again, groaning the entire time. Dizzy, he mumbled. Jabali left their side and picked up a metal bell sitting on the counter. He opened the door and rang it as loudly as he could. Ren could hear another door opening down the hall, and the sound of running footsteps. In the next moment, a healer entered, dressed in a green uniform. What's going on? The healer asked as they entered.
Hawk woke up,
Jabali said, motioning at Hyaktu.
He's dizzy and disoriented and in lots of pain.
The healer nodded. I'll give him some potions. But Hyaktu was shaking his head at this. No potions, he moaned, pursing his lips.
This ain't the time to pretend to be strong and refuse potions, love,
Jabali grumbled, stepping closer to Hyaktu.
You gotta take him if you want to get stronger and look for Zin.
Zin! Hyaktu opened his eyes again and sat up. Where? Ren could not see as more tears fell, her glasses fogging up. They're not here, Dad, she managed to choke out, taking her glasses off to wipe at her eyes. Here, I need you to take this, the doctor said, leaning over the bed with a vial in their hand. It'll help with the pain. Hyaktu shook his head, closing his eyes again.
Take the potion,
Jabali growled. But Hyaktu kept shaking his head. Jabali sighed heavily. He snatched the potion from the surprised healer and opened it, a sour smell wafting through the air at once. He then swooped upon Hyaktu, grabbing his head to pull it back with one hand and forcing the vial against his closed lips with the other. Jabali tilted Hyaktu's head back until he was forced to swallow the potion. Hyaktu struggled pointlessly in Jabali's stronghold, the healer watching on with concern in their eyes. Was that really necessary? The healer asked once Hyaktu had swallowed.
You don't know how stubborn he is,
Jabali grunted. He passed the empty vial to the healer and asked,
Next.
The doctor hesitated a moment, then pulled a new vial from thin air and said, This one will help with the dizziness and nausea. Hyaktu groaned, but he was too weak to fight. Jabali forced the next potion onto him, which smelled more pleasant than the last. You'll feel better soon, the healer told Hyaktu once he swallowed again. They looked at Jabali and said, I recommend you get your husband some food. Start with small... Husband? Hyaktu cried out suddenly, his eyes opening as he tried to peer up at Jabali, who stood behind him.
Yes, love, you haven't forgotten that, have you?
Jabali asked in exasperation, though there was a wary look on his face. Hyaktu stared at Jabali in confusion, fear flashing through his violet eyes. He struggled to speak for several seconds before giving up the attempt. The healer stared between the men for a moment, then said, Start him with something like rice or bread, just small amounts. He needs to get food in him. There is food in the kitchen. Jabali nodded. Will do, he grunted. Hyaktu continued to stare at Jabali. Then he mumbled, No food.
You need to eat, love,
Jabali said. No. If he doesn't want to eat, we can give him another potion, the doctor added.
Oh, I'll make him eat,
grumbled Jabali. No, Hyaktu moaned, closing his eyes. Jabali put his hand on Hyaktu's shoulder and rubbed it.
It'll be okay,
he said softly.
We're gonna get you better, but you can only get better if you eat.
Hyaktu sighed heavily and gave up the fight, leaning back in the bed. Jabali stroked his hand through Hyaktu's thick hair, the action seeming to calm him down. He no longer shifted his position, and the groaning stopped. Ren let out a sigh of relief, still rubbing her wet eyes. If you need anything else, ring the bell, the healer said.
Thank you for your help,
Jabali said softly, staring down at Hyaktu.
I apologize for my husband's behavior. He don't like taking potions if he can help it.
I've dealt with worse, they said with a shrug. The doctor left the room again, leaving the door open behind them. The only sound was that of Ren's sniffles as she stared down at her father.
He'll be okay, Ren,
Jabali said. Ren stifled a sob, trying to break through. She nodded numbly, her whole body shivering. I've never seen him act like that before. How so scary. How's he ever going to be okay? But she didn't say any of her thoughts aloud, not wanting Hyaktu to hear her words.
I'll get him some food,
Jabali said.
How's about you sit here with him, keep him company so he stays calm?
Ren nodded at once. Jabali left the room at a brisk pace. Ren shifted closer to her father and grabbed his bruised hand with both of hers, noting that his skin was frigid and his whole body was shivering. Do you want the blanket, Dad? Ren asked quietly, reaching for the cover at the end of the bed. No, he moaned. Hot. Ren put a hand on his scratched forehead, but he wasn't hot to the touch. She frowned, hoping that he was merely feeling side effects of the potions. Are you still hurting? Yes. Is it as bad as it was before? He paused, then mumbled, No. Ren sighed in relief and sat on the bed beside him. She did not know what else to say, so she just continued to stare down at him, despite hating how weak he appeared. Jabali, Hyaktu moaned softly. He's husband? No, Ren said, bewildered. Are his thoughts really this jumbled? Does he not have a sense of what's real and what's not? He's acting as your husband and my dad for now. The government's looking for you, so he came up with a cover story. So if he calls you Hawk, that's your name, okay? Hawk Thorntree, and I'm Lotus Thorntree. Hyaktu grunted, burying his face into the sheets and giving no other response. Jabali returned soon after, closing the door behind him. He held a small wooden plate, which contained a portion of rice and a single bread roll. He set the plate on the counter beside the bed, taking the bread and ripping a piece off it.
Hyaktu, it's time to eat,
Jabali said.
Would you like to try?
Hyaktu groaned and turned away from Jabali.
If I have to force feed you, I will,
Jabali warned. No food, Hyaktu muttered.
You need some food in ya.
Please, Dad, you have to eat, Ren said, squeezing his hand. If you don't eat, you won't get better, and they'll just keep putting more potions in you, and we'll never be able to look for Hyaktu shifted towards Jabali and reached his free hand forward. Jabali put the small piece of bread in his palm, and he raised it to his lips. He hesitated a moment, then put the bread in his mouth, slowly chewed and swallowed. Ren could feel the tension in his body the entire time.
There you go. You're doing good,
Jabali soothed, handing him another piece. It took quite a few minutes, but Hyaktu managed to eat the whole bread roll. He refused to have any of the rice, so Jabali set it off to the side and said he'd try again later. The healer came in to check on them, but Hyaktu was no longer in pain and therefore did not need more potions. None of them spoke, but the silence wasn't terrible by any means. With Hyaktu calmer and in less pain, Ren didn't feel as scared or worried as she'd been before. Eventually, Hyaktu fell asleep again, his soft snores the only sound in the room.
Ren, do you want to go back to the ship and go to bed?
Jabali asked in a low voice. Ren rubbed at her eyes. I don't want to leave Dad. Besides, it's only the afternoon, maybe the evening.
You need to rest.
But what about you? You look tired, Ren observed, noting the dark shadows beneath his eyes. Jabali shrugged.
Why don't you get back to Mintonaster and update them with how he's doing?
Okay, Ren said, reluctantly getting to her feet and letting go of her father's hand.
He'll be fine, Ren,
Jabali murmured.
You'll see. The first day or two is always the worst. But he'll be back on his feet soon, and we can get out of here before the Gov has the chance to find us.
Ren opened the door and looked over her shoulder at him, letting out a soft sigh. I hope so, she whispered. She exited the room and walked down the hall at a brisk pace, half of her wanting to go back and half of her wanting to run away. Ren returned to the ship within the next 30 minutes, moving slowly in her dejection and to avoid the government officials crawling through the city. Yet she did not enter the vessel hidden among the trees. She instead gazed up at it, then turned around and returned to the edge of the city. Sitting down on some soft dirt, she gazed up at the cloud-scudded sky, watching as it went from blue to orange and pink, and finally to deep purple with stars. At this point, she realized that Mint and Aster would likely be worrying about her. She got to her feet and returned to the ship with a small sigh, only to find the kitchen empty. Frowning, she opened several of the bedroom doors as quietly as she could, until she found that both were asleep in their own rooms. Grateful she didn't have to talk to anyone, Ren went to her own room and closed the door. Yet she did not get much sleep. She tossed and turned, trapped in nightmares where Hyaktu was writhing in pain and moaning and screaming and reaching out for help. But Ren was unable to aid him, unable to end the pain, unable to leave the twisted dreams. To make things worse, the government agents showed up, both of them reaching their hands out to her, not to snatch her and tug her away, but to have her join them in arresting her father. Though Ren screamed in the nightmare, she could not scream in the real world. Mint woke her the next morning, much to Ren's relief. She did not think she'd be able to get up otherwise, now running through a dangerous maze as she attempted to search for Zin. She took a few moments sitting in bed, taking deep breaths to calm her flying heart. Once ready, she joined Mint and Aster at the kitchen table for peanut spread toast. Aster looked much better than the previous day. He was no longer covered in mud with messy hair and a tangled beard. He had showered, his blonde hair wavy, and his pointed face clean-shaven. Though he appeared bony, his eyes shined with life once more. Even Mint looked better from the previous day. His eyes were no longer wide, and his body was no longer tense with anxiety, though he still played with the pronouns bracelet on his wrist in a nervous manner. Ren forced a smile as she greeted them both, then told them about her father's condition.
That sounds awful,
Mint murmured when she'd finished, his green eyes concerned.
It was,
Ren muttered.
I've never seen him so vulnerable.
Nobody can be strong every second of every day, Aster pointed out, taking a sip of his tea. It's quite impossible to be any one trait or emotion all the time. Your father has these moments of weakness, just like the rest of us. Ren shifted uneasily, lowering her eyes to the floor. So, what's the plan now? Aster asked. He shouldn't be staying in the hospital with the government around.
Yeah, there are agents all over the place,
Ren agreed, a shiver running down her spine as she thought of her nightmares again.
I even heard some of the students trying to figure out where Dad is. There's a big reward for his capture.
She sighed and murmured,
We'll just need to see how Dad's doing today.
Aster shrugged. Very well, he murmured. But the longer he stays, the more likely it is he'll be found and locked up, and none of us will be able to help him then, especially if Fern is in prison already, too.
We don't know that for sure,
Ren pointed out. Aster did not respond, his orange eyes glazing over as he gazed out the window at the front of the ship to the forest beyond. Only the distant sound of birds could be heard. Ren shifted uneasily and got to her feet.
I think I'll see how Dad is doing now. Oh, and Mint, do you know any potions that Dad should take? Aster doesn't seem to be in as bad condition as him, despite being Kaokat's prisoner for months.
Mint frowned.
I don't know why that'd be the case, as Mr. Sundale seems to be in a lot less pain too. But he's a spirit, isn't he? Maybe that has something to do with it. That's likely how he survived the imprisonment, I'd think.
Aster nodded quietly beside them, his eyes on the floor.
As for potions, it sounds like the healers gave him some of the standard pain-reducing potions, like Clefton Lemon or Ginger Retish. But there are more powerful potions that can be used to reduce pain, like the Prickle Pepper potion that I've been giving to Mr. Sundale, or the Bestial Root potion. But those two sometimes make people dizzy, so your father probably shouldn't take them. So you wouldn't be able to brew him up something else to help?
Ren asked in disappointment. Mint shook his head.
I'm sorry, Ren. I just know how to make the ones I listed off. You said there's a library on the ship, right? I'll try to look through some books for something else that can help.
Ren nodded.
Thank you. I'd really appreciate it. Of course, Mint murmured. Ren left for Vinetown alone, tying her short hair up and hiding it beneath a hat she found in one of the ship's rooms. She kept her eyes open for government agents and classmates alike, but as it was early, not too many people appeared to be on the move. She reached the hospital as quickly as she could, then checked in with the receptionist and went up to room 22. She placed her hand on the doorknob, but hesitated as she heard voices inside. She bit her bottom lip, the image of Hyaktu moaning in pain coming to her mind again. Her heart sunk. She didn't think she could stand seeing him like that again. Maybe he's doing better now, she thought. She felt awkward standing outside the room, not knowing what the men inside might be conversing about. She therefore pressed her ear to the door, once checking to make sure nobody was walking through the hall. "Why'd you cut off my mustache?" Hyaktu was asking in a low voice, hardly audible to Ren.
"For your disguise,"
Jabali replied.
"Besides, it was getting a bit too long, don't you think?"
"Maybe a little, but you know it's weird."
"Yeah, it's only one strand of hair each side that grows all thick and long, I know."
Jabali huffed in amusement.
"Won't it grow back in like 2 days?"
Maybe a week if I'm lucky. And since it's so weird, it'll probably be short for a long time before it's able to grow so long again. You're lucky your beard grows so fast it'll be back by tomorrow." Ren snorted, glad she wasn't about to interrupt a serious conversation, and even happier to hear that her father seemed to be doing better. She knocked on the door.
"Baba?"
she called.
"It's me."
Jabali opened the door, dressed in a clean white shirt instead of the muddy blue one he'd been wearing the previous day. Hyaktu was sitting up in bed, much to Ren's surprise. He smiled at her as she entered, looking like a completely different person. He was strong enough to hold Jabali's mirror out in front of him, and even his cuts and bruises seemed paler as the healing paste worked its magic.
"Dad, are you doing any better? You look better."
"I am," he said, nodding at her. He looked at himself in the mirror and added, "Don't like the disguise, though. You'd think Jabali could at least leave me a bit of a mustache." Ren chuckled and walked over to the bed, sitting beside him. He smiled at her and set the mirror down, Ren placing her hand on his. His skin was still cold, and she could feel his body trembling. Her smile faltered.
"Did you eat anything yet?"
Ren asked.
I made him eat that rice from last night."
Jabali answered for Hyaktu, walking to the other side of the bed so Ren could see him.
"He also took more potions. One for pain, one for dizziness, one for strength, one for... I forget what else there was."
"Too many," scoffed Hyaktu, his body tensing.
"Yeah, maybe it's had, but if it helps you get better."
I know, Hyaktu grumbled. "I have to get better as fast as possible. I hate depending on so many potions, though. I feel so weak."
"You look stronger than yesterday," Ren assured him. "And from here, you'll just improve."
"As long as you keep eating,"
Jabali added.
"you look like a skeleton."
"I do not," scoffed Hyaktu.
Sure. I bet you still have your bad habit of skipping meals."
"Only when I'm busy or forget."
"Which is how often, Ren?"
Ren blinked in surprise.
"Oh, well, I'm not sure,"
She lied, pushing her glasses up her nose uneasily.
"Yep, still neglecting yourself."
Jabali said knowingly. Hyaktu huffed and made no response to that, instead asking, "What about Zen? Has anyone found them yet?" Ren shook her head quietly, feeling guilty that she wasn't searching for them that very moment.
"But where am I supposed to look, especially if Killcat teleported them away someplace?"
"It'd be best to get out of here as soon as possible," Hyaktu murmured, more to himself than to them. "You said we're going to Soljan, right?"
"You ain't going anywhere till them healers clear you."
Jabali grumbled.
"Bubba, Dad has a point," Ren said. "If the government comes to the hospital, or someone here recognizes Dad and tells them..."
She shifted awkwardly, not wanting to think what the outcome would be.
"Can't we just take Dad back to the ship? Mint can make him potions. He told us just this morning he knows how to make the standard ones the healers are using here."
Jabali frowned.
"That's not a bad idea, then. Mint was supposed to fill in for Fern, eh?
"Come on, Bubba," Hyaktu said, trying to hold back a smile. Let's leave.
Fine, but not for another day, okay?
Why not today?
Because you might be fine now, but your condition can worsen.
Jabali said seriously.
You know the first 2 days are the most critical for any medical condition. I hope you don't get bad again, of course, but I don't want to move you too soon and have you relapse without experienced healers around to take care of you.
Hyaktu grunted in response, not looking happy about the decision, but seeming too tired to fight it. He settled down on the bed again, resting the back of his free hand on his forehead as he stared at the ceiling.
You okay, Dad?
Ren asked, squeezing his hand. I'm fine.
Are you still having pain?
I'm fine.
Do you want more food?
No.
Do you want to go back to sleep?
Absolutely not, he grumbled. I'm already sick of lying here.
Do you want to go outside?
No!
Jabali growled before Hyaktu could respond.
We're not putting him in plain sight of the gov.
And here I thought you were going to say I wouldn't be able to walk, Hyaktu muttered, closing his eyes.
That ain't a problem, I just carry you like I always do,
Scoffed Jabali.
But we ain't bringing you out with the gov on high alert.
Hyaktu snorted lightly. I hate governments.
Yeah, we know.
Jabali sighed.
How come, though?
Ren asked curiously, tilting her head as she peered down at her father.
I know you were worried all year about the government shutting us down, but it seemed like you didn't like them from the start, and you only expected the worst from them. I mean, clearly they are bad, but...
Never, ever trust the government, Hyaktu said seriously, opening his eyes to stare up at her. In Asali, the government did absolutely nothing when our home was being attacked, and we reached out for help. In Ire, they said they wouldn't attack a village, then proceeded to do so, killing many innocent people. That's why I was so concerned about the government getting involved. And why I kept lying to them, he said with a sigh. I was trying to protect everyone at the school by keeping the government out.
Oh.
Ren swallowed past the large lump that formed in her throat, then whispered in a hollow voice.
Dad, I called the government.
She could feel Hyaktu's intense gaze on her. Nobody spoke, the silence stretching through the room like fog in a jungle. Ren's body became more and more tense, her eyes growing watery as she stared at the floor. Finally, Hyaktu murmured, I know. While I'm not happy that you called them, it would have happened anyway. And I understand that you were in a tough position after everyone was captured or had left. You were just trying to look out for us. Tears slid down her freckled cheeks, her vision blurry. She nodded several times, her heart feeling broken yet warm at the same time. Though she was still swamped with guilt, she knew her father would understand her actions.
I'm sorry,
she said, hardly able to hear herself in the quiet room.
I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just so worried about everyone.
I know, Hyaktu said firmly. Ren wiped the tears away, taking off her glasses to do so. When she put them back on, she saw that Hyaktu had his eyes closed again, and his lips were pursed. She gazed at him, but she wasn't really seeing him as her thoughts drifted back to the nightmare she'd had. Yet this time, she imagined Zin in her mind's eye, trapped against glowing dragonvine trees, their strength being sucked from them.
Hey, Ren!
Jabali said suddenly, snapping her from her stupor.
Do you think you could go to cool coffee for me?
Oh, sure,
Ren said, getting to her feet at once.
I need you to give this to Marsh,
Jabali went on, searching in his pants pocket until he found a folded piece of paper. He handed it to her and added,
It's a transfer of ownership, so he can take the coffee shop if he wants it. If not, then I'll just close it down.
Close it down?
Ren asked in surprise.
Why?
Jabali snorted softly.
We're gonna be on the run from the gov and searching for Zin, ain't we? I can't be worrying about some coffee shop. Besides, I've shut down many businesses in the past. I can always restart someplace else where it's safer.
Ren frowned and placed the paper in her pocket.
Okay.
And can you get us some muffins, too?
Jabali asked, placing his hand on her shoulder and guiding her to the door.
Of course.
Jabali opened the door and practically shoved her out.
Thanks, Lotus. Be quick, okay? Don't need to be seen.
Ren nodded seriously.
Okay, Baba.
Jabali gazed down at her for a long moment, nodded, then closed the door. Ren turned away from the room, her heart beating rapidly as she walked down the mint-scented hall.
What if the government sees me, or one of the other students? Why can't Jabali do this himself? He's the one with the disguise, not me. Or was he trying to make me leave?